He laid white roses on the grave before his morning meetings, a penance no amount of wealth could erase. But the child who appeared through the fog that Tuesday knew the name carved in stone. Lucas felt his heart crack open when she asked why the rich man kept visiting where Daddy slept. No one realized, until that moment, the billionaire and the girl had been mourning the same ghost. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you. The cemetery breathed mist in the early morning hours. Cold tendrils of fog wrapping around weathered headstones like ghosts, unwilling to let go of the world they once knew. Lucas Sterling moved through this gray landscape, as he had every morning for 7 years, his expensive wool coat doing nothing to warm the ice that had settled permanently in his chest. He was 38 years old, a self-made billionaire whose name appeared in financial magazines and technology conferences. Yet here in Oakwood Cemetery at 6 in the morning, before his empire demanded his attention, he was simply a man carrying 12 white roses with trembling hands. The grave was modest, almost humble in its simplicity, bearing only a name and 2 dates that contained an entire universe of regret: Daniel James Carter. The numbers carved into stone told the world that Daniel had died 7 years ago at 32, but they could not tell anyone what that death had cost, what it continued to cost every single day. Lucas knelt on the damp ground, his knees pressing into earth that never seemed to dry, and placed the roses one by one against the headstone. His hands shook as they always did, a tremor that no amount of wealth or success could still. No one at Sterling Innovations knew about this ritual, this daily penance that shaped his life more than any board meeting or product launch. His penthouse apartment felt like a mausoleum, all glass and steel and emptiness, a monument to achievement that tasted like ash in his mouth. He donated millions to charities, funded scholarships, built entire wings of hospitals, but nothing filled the void. Nothing came close to erasing what he had done. The mist swirled thicker as he finished arranging the flowers, and that was when he saw her, a small figure emerging from the fog like something conjured from his nightmares, a child of perhaps 6 or 7 years, with tangled dark hair that caught droplets of moisture, and a worn purple jacket with a broken zipper that flapped open despite the cold. Her sneakers were muddy, too thin for the weather, and she clutched something close to her chest. She approached with the fearless directness that only children possess. No regard for his expensive clothes or the way his presence commanded rooms, no understanding that men like him existed in a different world. She stopped a few feet away, her small face solemn, her eyes too knowing for someone so young. "Why do you bring flowers to where Daddy sleeps?" she asked. And the question shattered something in Lucas that had been holding together by the thinnest of threads. His hands froze on the last rose, his knees buckled slightly, the entire world tilting on its axis in a way that made him dizzy and sick. The impossibility of her words crashed over him in waves. Daniel had never mentioned a child, had never been married as far as Lucas knew, had died alone and childless in a senseless tragedy that Lucas carried like stones in his pockets. His voice failed him once, twice, 3 times as he tried to form words, his throat closing around sounds that would not come. The girl waited with patient curiosity, the way children do when they have asked a simple question and cannot understand why the answer should be difficult. Lucas finally managed to speak, his voice rough and broken. "I knew him," he said. And even those 3 words felt like lies, like inadequate shadows of a truth too terrible to voice. The girl tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him want to run, to drive away and never come back. But he was frozen there on his knees in the cold cemetery dirt. "My name is Lily," she said, and she held out what she had been clutching. It was a photograph, creased and worn from being carried and looked at too many times, and in it Lucas saw Daniel, but not the Daniel he had known, not the brilliant programmer and ethical compass and best friend he had let die on a rainy roadside. This Daniel was smiling in a way Lucas had never seen. his arm around a pregnant woman with gentle eyes and dark hair like the child standing before him. This Daniel looked happy, complete, like a man who had found everything he needed in the world. Lily explained in the matter-of-fact way that children explain impossible things, that Mommy had gone to heaven when Lily was born, that both her parents slept now in peaceful places, though she sometimes got confused about which cemetery held which parent, and in her mind they rested together somewhere in the clouds. She came here every week with Nana, she said, but Nana was sick today, so Lily had come alone because she needed to tell Daddy about a drawing she made at school. She had seen Lucas before, she told him, many times, the sad man in fancy clothes who brought flowers every single day, and she had been curious, but Nana always hurried her away before she could ask questions. Lucas felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling. 7 years of compartmentalized grief and guilt breaking open in his chest like a dam, giving way to flood waters. Daniel had a girlfriend he never met, a woman named Sarah whom he had loved, a baby on the way that he never knew existed. The accident happened a week before Sarah planned to tell him, Lily explained in her innocent way, and then Mommy died bringing Lily into the world, and Nana said it was very sad, but that Daddy and Mommy loved her from heaven. The guilt that Lucas had carried like a second skeleton inside his body multiplied, expanding until he could barely breathe. He had not just taken Daniel from the world. He had taken a father from this child, had stolen a future of bedtime stories and scraped knees and first days of school. Lily asked if he knew her daddy, and Lucas heard himself say yes. He was my best friend. And the words were true, but also the greatest lie he had ever told, because what kind of friend does what he did? Lily smiled then, a gap-toothed grin that pierced him like a blade. Then why have you not visited us? She asked with childish logic, and Lucas had no answer that would not damn him. She drew him a map on a piece of paper she pulled from her pocket, careful directions in crayon, and invited him to meet Nana, who talked about Daddy's friends sometimes, and would like to meet someone who knew him. Lucas took the map with numb fingers, knowing he should refuse, knowing he should disappear from their lives and let them grieve in peace without the presence of the man who killed Daniel, but he could not form the words to say no. Over the following days he had his assistant research quietly, carefully, with instructions to be discreet. Martha Carter, age 71. Retired school teacher living on a fixed pension in a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood. Medical bills mounting, arthritis making it difficult to work even part-time, raising a 6-year-old on nearly nothing, pride keeping her from seeking help. No contact with Daniel's former colleagues or friends, just a dignified old woman, doing her best to honor her son's memory by raising his daughter with love, if not material comfort. Lucas's wealth felt obscene in comparison, his penthouse and cars and investment portfolios, a sick joke when this woman and child struggled for basics. When he finally gathered the courage to visit, following Lily's careful map, he climbed stairs in a building with peeling paint and narrow hallways that smelled of other people's cooking, and heard the sounds of life happening behind thin walls. Martha answered the door, and he saw Daniel in her eyes, saw the same kindness and intelligence, saw the weight of loss that she carried in the set of her shoulders. She was small, dignified, despite her worn clothes that were clean but dated. And her shock at seeing Lucas Sterling on her doorstep was palpable. "Why would someone like you come here?" she asked, suspicion and confusion mingling in her voice. Lucas could not tell her the truth. Not yet, perhaps not ever. So he said he knew Daniel from work, which was technically true even if it was truth, wrapped in layers of omission and lies. Lily appeared behind her grandmother, face lighting up with recognition and joy. "He brings Daddy flowers every day," she announced. And Lucas watched Martha's suspicion soften just a fraction at this evidence that he had cared, that he remembered. The apartment was small, but spotless. Every surface, speaking of Martha's determination to maintain dignity and order despite poverty. Photographs of Daniel covered the walls, tracking his life from childhood through graduation, freezing him forever at 32 with his whole future still ahead of him. Lily's corner held second-hand toys arranged carefully. Her bed made with threadbare blankets that were nevertheless tucked with love. Martha told Lucas about Daniel over weak tea served in mismatched cups, about his brilliance and kindness, about how he was putting himself through graduate school while working full-time. She told him about Sarah, the sweet girl who loved Daniel with her whole heart. The tragedy of her death in childbirth, leaving Martha to raise a granddaughter alone. Daniel never knew about Lily, Martha explained, her voice breaking on the words. The accident happened the week before Sarah planned to tell him. He died, not knowing he had made this beautiful life. This little girl, who had his eyes and his gentle spirit. Martha spoke of her struggle with pride evident and pain visible, refusing to be a charity case, working through arthritis that made her hands stiffen and ache, doing everything she could to give Lily a good life. Lucas sat in their tiny living room and watched Lily draw pictures of a father she never met. Her laughter filling spaces that his penthouse had never known, and something stirred in him that was not just guilt but recognition of what real love looked like. That night, alone in his glass and steel tower, the memories he had tried to bury for 7 years rose up and consumed him. He and Daniel had been best friends since college, had built sterling innovations together with Daniel's genius and Lucas's business instinct, partners in every sense. Daniel was the heart of the company, the ethical center, the better man. And Lucas knew it even as his own ambition grew sharper and more ruthless. The conflict that destroyed everything came over a hostile takeover opportunity. Billions of dollars dangling like bait. And Daniel's opposition was absolute. It would destroy a smaller competitor, would cost hundreds of jobs. And Daniel said he would walk away from the company if Lucas pursued it. Lucas, burning with ambition and pride, told him to do what he wanted. The argument was vicious, words spoken that could not be taken back, and Daniel left the office angry and hurt on a rainy evening when visibility was poor. His car broke down on a dangerous stretch of highway, and Lucas, leaving late, saw Daniel's car on the roadside. He saw it and made a choice. Pride still burning, anger still fresh, he drove past. The call came an hour later. Daniel had been struck by a drunk driver while trying to fix his car, died instantly at the scene. And Lucas knew with crushing certainty that if he had stopped, Daniel would have been in his car, safe, alive, still in the world. The takeover deal was cancelled the next day because Daniel had been right, had always been right. And Lucas built an empire on Daniel's innovations, feeling like a thief stealing from a grave. Every dollar he made was tainted by that choice, that moment when pride mattered more than friendship, and the roses began the day they buried Daniel and had never stopped. He donated millions anonymously, funded causes Daniel cared about, imposed isolation on himself because he did not deserve happiness or family or peace. But nothing filled the void, nothing came close to redemption. Now, meeting Lily, the guilt had a face and a voice, and a crushing reality that followed him through every waking moment. This child, this bright, beautiful child, existed in the world without a father because Lucas had been too proud to stop his car on a rainy night 7 years ago, and the weight of that choice pressed down on him until he thought his bones would crack under the burden of what he had done. Lucas knew with terrible certainty that he could not walk away from Lily and Martha now. He could not return to the hollow existence he had carved out for himself in that glass tower, but he also knew with equal certainty that he could not tell them the truth about what he had done. The fear of losing this fragile connection, of seeing love turn to hatred in Martha's eyes and confusion in Lily's innocent face, paralyzed him into a decision that felt both necessary and unforgivable. He would become their silent guardian, their mysterious benefactor, helping from the shadows while building a relationship on foundations he knew were cracked and crumbling. The interventions began carefully, anonymously, each one designed to ease their burden without raising suspicion. Martha's medical bills disappeared first, paid through channels that made it appear like an insurance correction, a bureaucratic error finally remedied after years of oversight. A scholarship appeared for Lily at a better school, one with smaller classes and art programs, and teachers who had time to nurture bright young minds, and it bore Daniel's name, as if some tech education foundation had chosen to honor him posthumously. The apartment building itself began to transform as Lucas bought it through a shell company and funded repairs that the previous landlord had ignored for decades, fresh paint and new windows, and heat that actually worked when winter came. Groceries appeared at their door with delivery slips claiming wrong address. Boxes filled with fresh vegetables and good meat and treats that Lily's eyes grew wide seeing. Martha's suspicions grew with each mysterious gift, each unexplained improvement. But she could not prove anything, could not trace the invisible hand that seemed determined to lift them up. Lucas began visiting weekly, then twice weekly. His official story that he wanted to honor his old friend's memory by knowing Daniel's family, and the lie tasted bitter on his tongue, even as it opened doors he desperately wanted to walk through. Lily attached to him with the speed and completeness that only children possess. Seeing in this wealthy man who knew her daddy the father figure she had never had, and she would run to him when he arrived with drawings clutched in her small hands and stories tumbling from her lips about school and friends and the world she was discovering. She asked him to play with her worn toys, to read her books with fraying covers, to sit on the floor and build block towers that she would knock down with delighted laughter that cut through him like breaking glass. Lucas felt his frozen heart beginning to thaw despite his desperate resistance. Felt warmth spreading through places that had been numb for 7 years, and the guilt intensified because he knew he was stealing moments that should have belonged to Daniel. Martha watched carefully, seeing the genuine affection in Lucas's interactions with Lily, the way he listened when the child spoke as if her words contained profound wisdom, the patience he showed when she demanded his attention or climbed into his lap during their visits. But Martha also sensed something hidden beneath his careful kindness, something that made her wake at night with questions forming in the darkness. Lucas fell into a pattern of belonging that terrified him, even as he craved it more with each passing week. Lily began calling him Uncle Lucas, the title slipping naturally from her lips as if he had always been part of their small family. And when Martha invited him to stay for dinner, a simple meal of pasta and sauce that cost almost nothing but tasted better than anything served in the expensive restaurants he frequented, he felt tears prick his eyes at the normalcy of it all. He was building a life on a foundation of lies, constructing happiness from the ruins of his greatest sin, and the knowledge that he was stealing what he had taken from Daniel made the guilt multiply until it felt like drowning. Lily talked about her daddy constantly to Lucas, asking questions that pierced him with their innocent directness. Did Daddy laugh a lot? She wanted to know. Her small face serious and searching. Was he smart like Nana says? Would he like my drawings? Lucas answered honestly because he owed Daniel at least that much truth. Yes, he said. Your father laughed more than anyone I knew, found joy in small things that others overlooked. Yes, he was brilliant in ways that most people never are, saw solutions where others saw only problems. And yes, he would have loved your drawings, would have hung them on every wall, and bragged about them to everyone he met. Each answer was a knife turning in Lucas's chest because he knew Daniel would have been an amazing father, would have been present and patient, and filled with wonder at this child who carried pieces of him forward into the world. Lily's trust in him was complete and unconditional, the way children love before they learn caution or suspicion, and she shared her secrets with him, her fears of storms and darkness, her dreams of becoming an artist or maybe a teacher like Nana used to be. Martha's walls continued to soften as she watched Lucas with Lily, seeing affection that could not be faked or performed for show. He fixed things around the apartment despite his obvious unfamiliarity with tools, a wealthy man fumbling with a screwdriver while sweat beaded on his forehead, and Lily offered helpful suggestions from her perch on the couch. He brought practical gifts, a winter coat for Lily that was expensive but not ostentatiously so, good shoes that would last and keep her feet dry, items chosen with care rather than showiness. One evening Martha spoke carefully over tea while Lily played in her corner. Daniel used to talk about his friend Lucas from college, she said, her eyes searching his face. Same Lucas? The panic that rose in him was visceral and choking, but he forced his voice to remain steady. There were several of us in that program, he said. the lie clumsy on his tongue. Martha's expression showed she did not quite believe him. "Funny," she said softly. "I looked you up. Sterling Innovations. That was Daniel's company too, was it not?" The walls were narrowing around him, and Lucas knew it, but he could not find the words to escape or confess. Martha had been researching, he realized, digging through old news articles and company founding documents, finding Daniel's name buried in early investor records where Lucas had tried to erase it from company history during his years of guilt-soaked revisionism. Her question came quietly, but with the weight of accumulated suspicion. "What really happened between you and my son?" Lucas deflected, stumbled through vague answers about business disagreements and the normal friction of partnership, but it was getting harder to maintain the fiction, harder to meet her knowing eyes. Something in him was transforming despite the lies and the guilt. He laughed for the first time in years at one of Lily's jokes, a silly thing about a duck and a bicycle that should not have been funny, but her delivery and gap-toothed grin made joy burst from him like something long caged, finally breaking free. He started taking Sundays off from work, an unprecedented move that shocked his assistants and board members, spending the day with Martha and Lily at parks or museums, or simply in their small apartment, letting the hours pass in comfortable domesticity. His penthouse began to change as he hung Lily's drawings on his previously bare walls, bright splashes of color and childish enthusiasm, transforming sterile space into something that felt almost like a home. His business decisions shifted as he consciously chose to make the kind of ethical calls that Daniel would have made, turning down profitable deals that would harm workers or communities, prioritizing long-term good over short-term gain. He even started therapy sessions that he had resisted for years. Finally talking to someone about hope instead of just guilt, about the possibility that maybe he could be more than the sum of his worst choice. But truth has a way of demanding acknowledgement, of forcing itself into light, no matter how deeply it is buried. Martha found the old news article on an afternoon when rain drummed against the windows and Lily was at school. The headline, stark and terrible. Tech entrepreneur Daniel Carter dies in highway accident. She read details that Lucas had never known. Police report mentions that made her hands shake and her breath catch. A car had driven past Daniel on that rainy night, had been captured on a traffic camera some distance up the road, and though the image was blurry, the partial license plate matched records she had painstakingly searched. It matched the registration for a vehicle owned by Lucas Sterling 7 years ago. She knew. Martha invited Lucas over on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice on the phone carefully neutral, mentioning that Lily would be at a friend's house and they could talk. He arrived with roses from the cemetery still fragrant in his car, with no sense of the axe that was about to fall. She placed the article on the small kitchen table between them. The paper yellowed with age, but the words still clear and damning. "It was you," she said, and her voice was not loud or angry but cold with devastating pain. "You drove past him." Lucas felt the last of his carefully constructed defenses crumble, felt the truth spill out of him like blood from a mortal wound. He told her everything, the argument over the business deal, the harsh words neither of them could take back, the pride that burned so hot it blinded him to humanity. He confessed to seeing Daniel's car on that roadside, to making the choice to drive past, to getting the call an hour later that shattered his world. His voice broke as he spoke. "I killed him," he said, the words raw and terrible in the quiet apartment. "I know I killed him." Martha's reaction was not the explosion of rage he had braced for, but something worse, a cold and bottomless grief that seemed to hollow her out before his eyes. "You let my son die on that roadside," she said quietly. "Alone. In the rain. You have been coming here, playing with his daughter, pretending." She stopped, unable to finish. "Pretending what?" Lucas asked, though he knew the answer. "Pretending you are a good man? That you can replace him?" "No," Lucas said desperately. "Never that. I know I cannot. I know I do not deserve any of this." "Deserve?" Martha's laugh was bitter and broken. "You do not deserve to even speak his name." She ordered him out with a finality that left no room for argument or pleading. Do not come back. Do not contact us. Stay away from Lily." Her voice cracked on the child's name. "I will tell her you had to leave for business. She does not need to know what kind of man you really are." Lucas left, shattered in ways that made his previous 7 years of guilt seem like minor wounds compared to this amputation of everything he had allowed himself to want. He knew he deserved this, and worse, deserved to lose them just as he had lost Daniel, deserved to be alone with his choice forever. He returned to his penthouse and finally broke completely. 7 years of carefully contained grief exploding outward in a storm that left him gasping on the floor, surrounded by glass and steel that offered no comfort. He could not eat or sleep or function, his body shutting down under the weight of loss compounded. For the first time in 7 years, he did not bring roses to the cemetery, could not bear to face that grave, knowing what it had cost everyone. His assistants panicked as he missed meetings and calls, as the carefully controlled empire he had built began to wobble without his constant attention. But Lucas sat in his dark apartment, replaying that rainy night endlessly, seeing every moment he could have chosen differently, every second where pride mattered more than friendship. Lily asked where Uncle Lucas had gone, her small voice confused and hurt. Why would Nana not talk about him? She drew a picture of the 3 of them together, her child's hand creating a family that no longer existed, and wanted to give it to him. Martha watched her granddaughter's sadness with a torn heart, her own rage and pain warring with the evidence of Lily's suffering. The child cried at night, asking questions that broke Martha into pieces. Did I do something wrong? Is Uncle Lucas mad at me? Martha held her and lied, saying he was just busy with work. But Lily was smart and sensitive and knew something terrible had happened to shatter their small happiness. Martha sat alone after putting Lily to bed, wrestling with memories of Daniel and his capacity for forgiveness. His gentle spirit that had always sought to understand rather than condemn. Would Daniel want this? Would he want Lily to lose another person she loved? The question tormented her because she knew the answer but could not reconcile it with her pain. Lucas's genuine care for Lily had been real. She could not deny that. But how could she weigh that against his unforgivable choice 7 years ago? Could someone be both monster and human, both guilty and worthy of redemption? Lucas stood at the cemetery, unable to kneel. The roses he finally brought again clutched uselessly in his hands. I am sorry, he whispered to the stone. I am so sorry. I do not know how to fix this. Your daughter is perfect. She has your laugh, your kindness. Martha is right. I do not deserve to be near them. For the first time he contemplated leaving the city entirely, disappearing to some other place where the weight of his choices might be lighter, where he would not have to see the cemetery every morning, or know that just across town a little girl was crying for an Uncle Lucas who had abandoned her, just like everyone else. The parallel suffering stretched across the city, 2 households broken by the same ancient sin, and neither Martha nor Lucas could see a path forward through the pain they both carried, like stones that grew heavier with each passing day. Martha sat alone in the darkness of her small apartment, long past midnight, unable to sleep, watching Lily dream in her narrow bed with the threadbare blankets pulled up to her chin, and something shifted inside her as she observed the tear stains still visible on the child's cheeks even in sleep. The rage that had sustained her for weeks was still there, still burning, but it was being slowly consumed by something larger and more painful, the recognition that her granddaughter was suffering for sins that were not her own. That in her righteous anger, Martha had taken away yet another person that Lily loved. She thought about Lucas over the months before the terrible revelation, how he had been with Lily, and she could not deny even in her fury that his love for the child had been genuine, not performance or manipulation, but real care that transformed his entire bearing when he walked through their door. The help he had given them, the anonymous gifts and mysterious improvements to their lives, had not been attempts to buy forgiveness, because he had not known that Martha would ever discover his role in Daniel's death, which meant they came from authentic remorse, from a need to ease suffering that he had caused, even if he could never claim credit or absolution. Martha remembered her son with piercing clarity. Remembered Daniel's capacity for forgiveness that had sometimes frustrated her with its absoluteness, his gentle insistence that people were more than their worst moments, that grace was not something to be rationed but given freely even when it hurt. Would Daniel want this? Would he want his daughter to lose another person she loved? To learn that the world was a place where mistakes could never be redeemed and second chances were only fairy tales? She knew the answer even as it tore at her, knew that Daniel would have wanted Lily to know love instead of hate, would have wanted her to grow up believing in the possibility of redemption rather than the permanence of condemnation. Martha picked up her phone with shaking hands and dialed Lucas's number at 2 a.m, her heart pounding as she waited through the rings. Lucas's phone shattered the silence of his dark penthouse, where he sat surrounded by the ruins of his carefully constructed life, and when he saw Martha's name on the screen, his hands shook so violently he nearly dropped the device. Her voice, when he answered, was tired, worn down by weeks of wrestling with impossible choices. Not warm but not cold either, somewhere in between where human beings actually lived. "Lily asks about you every day," Martha said without preamble. "She is crying herself to sleep." Lucas felt his throat close around words that would not come, felt tears he had thought exhausted weeks ago spring fresh to his eyes. "I understand why I cannot see her," he finally managed to say. "I accept it." Martha was quiet for a long moment, the silence stretching between them across the city like a bridge. Neither knew how to cross. "Do you love her?" Martha asked, and her voice broke slightly on the question. "My granddaughter." "Tell me the truth." Lucas did not hesitate because this was the one truth he could speak without shame or caveat. "More than I have loved anything in 7 years," he said, his voice raw and honest. "She is Daniel's gift to the world. She is everything good he would have been as a father." Martha made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or something in between. "I cannot forgive you," she said clearly. "Maybe I never will. But Daniel forgave everyone. It was his way. And Lily," she paused, her voice strengthening, "she is just a child. She does not deserve to lose someone else. You can come back, but on conditions." Lucas would have agreed to anything, would have walked across broken glass, or given away his entire fortune, or done penance for the rest of his life, if it meant seeing Lily again. Martha laid out her terms with the firmness of a retired teacher who knew how to set boundaries that mattered. Honesty from now on, complete and unflinching. No more secrets or careful omissions. Commitment to Lily's well-being that went beyond financial support to genuine presence and care. Understanding that trust must be rebuilt brick by brick, that proximity did not equal forgiveness, that Martha's pain was real and permanent and would not be dismissed or hurried. Lucas agreed to everything, his voice thick with gratitude and grief. When he arrived at their apartment 2 days later, Lily was there with Martha, and the child's face lit up with such pure joy that Lucas felt his heart crack open all over again. Martha had insisted that Lily must know some truth, an age-appropriate version that honored her intelligence while protecting her innocence, and together they sat down and explained in simple terms that Uncle Lucas had known Daddy, that they had a disagreement before Daddy went to heaven, that Uncle Lucas felt very sad about it and had needed some time away. Lily processed this with the seriousness children bring to important matters, her small face thoughtful and concerned. "But Daddy is not mad at you," she said with absolute certainty. "He is in heaven. He loves everyone there." Then she offered what Martha would later call the most profound theology either of them had ever heard. "You cannot be sad forever," Lily said, touching Lucas's hand. "It makes your heart sick." She climbed into his lap and hugged him with the fierce strength of a child who had missed someone terribly. "I missed you," she whispered against his shoulder. Lucas wept openly for the first time in years, not the silent tears he had shed in dark rooms alone, but great heaving sobs that shook his whole body, while a 6-year-old child patted his back and told him it would be okay. The healing that followed was slow and careful, built on honesty that had been missing before, and Lucas returned to visits that were different now, stripped of pretense and secrets, raw in their authenticity. He brought Lily to the cemetery, and they brought roses together, a child's small hand wrapped around stems while Lucas carried the rest, and she talked to her daddy with unself-conscious ease that broke and mended Lucas in equal measure. "Daddy, Uncle Lucas is here," she said to the stone. "He is nice. You would like him." Lucas added his own words, simplified for Lily's understanding but no less true. "I made a big mistake once," he told her, kneeling beside her on the damp ground. "I am trying every day to be better." Lily accepted this with the ease that children forgive and love purely, asking no more explanations than that. Satisfied that Uncle Lucas was sorry and trying, Martha watched Lucas with Lily over the following weeks and months, observed his patience when the child was difficult or demanding, witnessed the genuine joy that transformed his face when she ran to him with new drawings or stories, and slowly she began to see pieces of Daniel in Lucas's growing capacity for kindness. They talked late at night while Lily slept, Lucas telling stories of Daniel that Martha had never heard, college adventures and business triumphs, and small moments of grace that revealed her son's character, while Martha shared what Lucas had missed, Daniel's childhood and his dreams, and the particular way he laughed when something struck him as absurd. They grieved together for the man they had both loved, finding unexpected comfort in shared memory, and Martha spoke words one evening that cost her but felt necessary. "You are not the same man who drove past that car," she said quietly. Lucas looked at her with eyes that held both hope and fear. "I try not to be," he replied, "every single day." The practical changes Lucas made were transparent now. No more anonymous gifts or mysterious interventions, but honest conversations about needs and resources. He established a real trust fund for Lily, with Martha fully involved in every decision, named it the Daniel Carter Education Fund, in honor of the father she would never know, and structured it so that Martha maintained control and dignity. He helped Martha with real needs, but respectfully, offering rather than imposing, accepting her refusals as gracefully as her acceptances, learning that charity was not about the giver's need to help, but the recipient's right to choose. He introduced them to his world not to impress, but to share, bringing Lily to his office where she met his staff, who saw their famously serious boss smile and laugh for the first time in their memory, transforming from the marble statue they had known into someone recognizably human. His company underwent major restructuring as Lucas aligned it with Daniel's values, making decisions about ethics and responsibility that cost him profits but earned him sleep that had eluded him for years, and in a move that surprised the entire tech industry, he announced Daniel posthumously as co-founder of Sterling Innovations, restoring his friend's name to the company history from which guilt and shame had erased it. The emotional climax came at Lily's school event, a Bring Someone Special day where children invited important people in their lives, and Lily asked Lucas to come along with Nana. Lucas hesitated, uncertainty making him stumble over words. "Are you sure?" "Nana might want," he began. But Lily interrupted with the clarity of absolute conviction. "I want both of you," she said simply. "You are my family." At the school, surrounded by other children and their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, Lily introduced Lucas with pride in her voice. "This is Uncle Lucas," she told her classmates. "He knew my daddy. He takes care of us." One child asked if he was her grandpa, and Lily shook her head, searching for the right words. "No," she said finally. "He is." She paused, then smiled. "He is my Uncle Lucas." It was simple and perfect and enough, a definition that required no elaboration or justification, and Lucas felt something settle in his chest that had been loose and rattling for 7 years. A year passed, and with it came a new normal that would have seemed impossible in those dark weeks after Martha learned the truth. Lucas's routine still included the cemetery, but now sometimes Lily came with him, chattering about school while they arranged roses, and sometimes Martha joined them, the three of them standing together before the grave in companionable silence. They moved to a better apartment, not Lucas's choice, but Martha's. Maintaining her independence and pride while accepting help that felt respectful rather than patronizing, and Sunday dinners became tradition with Lucas cooking badly while they teased him and laughed at his culinary disasters. Lily called him on the phone with the casual ease of family. "Uncle Lucas, I lost a tooth." "Uncle Lucas, I got an A on my spelling test." His penthouse, once a sterile monument to success, filled with Lily's artwork and photographs of the three of them, evidence of life being lived rather than endured. Martha told Lucas one evening after Lily had gone to bed, her voice contemplative and sad, and something else he could not quite name, that she had thought she would hate him forever. "But Daniel would not want that," she continued, "and you have been good to her, good for her." It was not forgiveness exactly, but something else. Acceptance, perhaps, or coexistence. Something gentler than hate, but not quite absolution. A middle ground where broken people could build something new. She shared one final truth that Lucas would carry forever. "Daniel would have forgiven you," she said. "He forgave everyone." On the anniversary of Daniel's death, they went to the cemetery together, all three of them, and Lily was 7 now, with more understanding, but still that beautiful innocence that let her talk to her daddy like he could hear. "Daddy," she said, placing roses carefully, "Uncle Lucas is here again. And Nana. We are all here." Lucas spoke silently to the stone, words that had changed over the year from desperate apologies to something more complex. "I could not save you, but I am trying to honor you. I am trying to be the man you believed I could be." Martha's hand landed briefly on his shoulder, just for a moment. But it was there, solid and real, and Lily stood between them, holding both their hands, a family built from tragedy and held together by love and second chances. Lucas changed the company name to Sterling Carter Innovations and dedicated a yearly scholarship in Daniel's name. Lived a smaller life, less focused on building an empire and more on experiencing moments, and therapy helped him understand that he would always carry the guilt, but it did not have to consume him. That he could be both the man who made a terrible choice and the man who spent every day trying to be better. When Lily asked about her daddy, which she did often as she grew older and more curious, Lucas told her the truth. "He was the best person I knew," Lucas would say. "He made me want to be better, and he would have loved you more than anything in this world." At Lily's 8th birthday party, small and joyful in their apartment with balloons and cake and the comfortable chaos of children playing, Lucas gave her a journal and wrote on the first page in careful handwriting, "Your father's dreams for you." He listed the things Daniel had valued in life, the principles he had lived by, the qualities he had tried to cultivate in himself and others: kindness, courage, curiosity, love. Martha read it with tears in her eyes and nodded, recognition and approval mingling in her expression, and Lily hugged him with sticky cake fingers and sincere gratitude. "Thank you, Uncle Lucas," she said, and he looked at Martha across the small room and saw in her face the acknowledgement that they had built something from ruins, something imperfect but real. It was not forgiveness, and it was not forgetting, but it was moving forward, learning that love does not erase the past but can build a future. That sometimes the greatest gift is simply showing up, staying, trying. And sometimes that is enough. Lucas left the party as evening fell, and Martha walked him to the door, a ritual they had developed over the months. Daniel would be. She paused, searching for words. "He would be glad you are here." Lucas's voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you," he said, "for letting me try, for giving me this." Martha shook her head slightly. "It is not just for you," she said. "It is for her. And," she paused, "maybe a little for me too. We all needed someone to remember him with." Lucas drove home through the city as lights began to sparkle in windows and life continued its endless forward motion. And his phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Uncle Lucas, thank you for the book. Love you." He pulled over and read it again, his vision blurring, and whispered into the empty car, "I love you too, sweetheart." The weight was still there, would always be there, the knowledge of what he had done and what it had cost. But so was light. So was love. So was a reason to wake up tomorrow and bring roses again, to be present for a little girl who called him Uncle Lucas, to sit across from a woman who would never fully forgive him, but who let him try to be better, and in the space between guilt and grace, Lucas had found something he never expected. Not redemption, perhaps, because that seemed too grand and undeserved, but purpose, connection, a reason to keep trying, and maybe for a man with his history and his regrets, maybe that was more than enough.